Here we go. I want you to grab a Bible and turn to Matthew chapter 5. In our church Bibles, it is page 802. There should be some church Bibles around you. Matthew chapter 5, page 802. 802, Matthew chapter 5. If you're using a recovery Bible, 1202. And let me just say before I tell you why there's a strange-looking guy behind me. We have been going through the Gospel of Matthew now for a month or two, and we're making it our way in small sections now for these next couple of months. And we are entering today something called the Sermon on the Mount. For those of you who are new to the Bible and to church, Sermon on the Mount is this 3-chapter section of teachings of Jesus. And we're going to just look at the very beginning today, and it's something called the beatitudes. And we're going to talk about the beatitudes. But when we were preparing for today, I thought, you know what? Things like the beatitudes, they were meant to be heard. We read them all the time because they're in the Bible, but they're actually meant to be heard. And so I invited Jason, who used to be in my former church, and he's now is here, plays bass in the band. He's been a great actor for some of the drama things that I've been involved with over the years. And in my last church, he played Jesus in some dramas that we would do. And so I said, why don't you share the Beatitudes with us today? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read the first 2 verses. And then when we get to verse 3, we're not going to look at our Bibles. We're just going to leave them open till we come back to it. And we're going to listen to Jason or to Jesus teach the Beatitudes to us. Okay, you with me? So verse 1, one day as he saw the crowds gathering, Jesus went up on the mountainside and he sat down. His disciples gathered around him and he began to teach them.
God blesses those who are poor and who realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Likewise, God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy in this. Oh yes, be so very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember this, that the ancient prophets were persecuted in this very same way.
That's so cool. Thank you, Jason, for your participation with that today. So I want you to know that inner peace can be found eventually. This is what I came across this week. Some person wrote this. He said, this morning I saw a doctor on television, and he said the way to achieve inner peace is to finish all the things that you have started. So I looked around my house to see the things that I had started and hadn't finished. And before leaving the house this morning, I finished off a bottle of Merlot and a bottle of Chardonnay. Another one. My wife asked if she could have a little peace and quiet while she cooked dinner, so I took the battery out of the smoke alarm. You don't have to take it personally. Come on. Okay, we're going to start with our question. Those were meant to set up our question for today. Where and how do you find serenity? If you'd like to answer the question, we have a few of you answer to kind of get us started, and these guys will bring a microphone around, so get their attention. Stand up, speak directly into the mic, give us a brief answer. And so it's pretty self-explanatory, I think, for this crowd. Where and how do you find serenity? Go ahead, Frank.
Hi, my name's Frank. Good morning, everybody. I got a real quick answer for this one. Prayer.
Thank you, Frank. Who else would like to share?
I'm Heidi, and I'm an active believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm sober today. Hi.
Woohoo!
I find serenity in forgiveness.
Thank you, Heidi.
Hi, I'm Jan. Anyway, I find serenity in my recliner with my cat on my lap purring. And then I don't formally, I talk to God then, just kind of visit. And I then take time to try to listen and just be quiet. That's it.
Thanks, Jan.
I'm Kyra, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kyra.
And serenity means inner self-peace. It means, and where do I find it? I find it in a lot of things because it's how I live my life. And, church, my devotions at home, it takes me about 10 minutes to read, but I also think about what I read and how I can live a productive life without feeling negative. And serenity also means inner self peace. I never regret the past. I always call it life experience.
Thanks, Kyra. David, way back in the corner. All right. You guys stand up? Yep.
I'm Allison. I'm an addict. I find serenity anywhere I am.
So I missed it. So can you, one more time, nice and close into the mic.
I find serenity anywhere that I'm at.
Okay, cool. Awesome. We have one over here. Go ahead. Hold it close.
My name is Phoenix. I found serenity with my mom.
With your mom. Nice.
I find serenity in smiles and laughter all around me.
Smiles and laughter around you. Very nice. All right, we'll do one or two more if we have anybody.
My name is Samantha. I have 3 kids, so serenity is hard to find. But for me, I find serenity in going to my AA meetings and connecting with people there, and definitely at church, my church family. It's always so nice when I haven't been here for a couple weeks and just like getting hugs and where have you been? And Dale kind of maybe guilt tripping me a little bit. I'm kidding, but no, but I definitely find serenity at church and just how welcoming it is here.
Glad you're here, Sam. All right, last one. Go ahead.
My name's Jennifer, and I got peace with everybody. I love everybody. Serenity.
Thank you. Right behind you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for sharing, everybody. And I love those answers. We discussed that at 6:30 tonight. Love to have you back. Want to start off with kind of a little bit of a personal note, and then I'm really excited to share with you all today. The question that we just answered and that I wrote this week is kind of an interesting one to me right now. So I've had a bit of a stressful last couple of weeks. As we talked about already, our little church family has had 2 deaths in the last couple of weeks. A week ago, we buried a friend of ours here by the name of Ralph Nillis, who I had known for quite a few years. And tomorrow we will be saying goodbye to Wendy Cochin, who was a regular at this service. Honestly, I've known Wendy for almost 40 years. She used to babysit me. No, I'm just kidding. We're actually about the same age. And back in the early 80s, yes, I said 80s, I was a youth minister and an education minister at a little church here in Fargo called St. John's Lutheran Church. It's on the entrance of Lindenwood Park. And Ray and Wendy were members there, helped with our youth some. Over the years, we've had a little more of a distant connection until recently. But they raised 7 kids. We raised 2, but a couple of our 2 kids were the same age as a couple of theirs. And in the midst of their own family issues, Wendy and Ray came here and found a home. Wendy had really jumped in and immersed herself in some groups and really found great support. Ray, just the last year or 2, has been on our board of directors, and so they have really invested themselves in our life community, and I'm very grateful for Wendy and her years here at Lighthouse. As a pastor, deaths can be a bit stressful, especially when you are connected deeply to people. Loss is hard on any family, right? And it is also hard on church families. So I was feeling it a bit this week. And this last week on Wednesday night, I was helping out with our youth, which I've been doing pretty regularly on Wednesday evenings. And some of the boys were, well, let's just say restless. And I went home a bit irritated. Know what I'm talking about? Then on Thursday night at Celebrate Recovery, we had, should we say, a lively group. And a few issues that kind of went on. And there was a young man who I hadn't seen in quite a while. He was back at center. Some of you will appreciate this. And he was here again on Thursday night, and towards the end of the evening, he came up to me and he said, "Pastor, are you irritated tonight?" And I wanted to punch him, but instead, I thought about it for a moment, and I said, "Yes, a little bit." And I thought on my way home on Thursday night that there's this section in the AA Big Book that some of you are familiar with, where it talks about how alcoholics, and I would actually say human beings, can find themselves at times in their life a little bit irritable, restless, and discontent. Anybody here know what that's all like? Yeah? And, we know that the alcoholic tends to medicate himself or herself with alcohol in order to deal with being irritable, restless, and discontent. The drug addict uses narcotics. The person addicted to food uses food. You got the picture? All right. So the thing is, and I'm going to tie this to the beatitudes, so just hang with me. There was a time in my life when I didn't really know that I was irritated, restless, or discontent. I just was me. Yeah? I mean, I didn't really think about it, I mean, I might have been, thought, well, I'm kind of upset or something, but I didn't really think about and analyze that there were moments in my life where I was irritable, restless, and discontent. And the thing is in recovery, I've learned to be more self-aware. I've learned to be more self-aware, to identify what's going on with me, and to deal with it in healthier ways. Not always, but I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress. And so I wanted to share that with you today, because here's the deal. I've learned this by going through what I went through. The only reason I'm more self-aware today is because of what I went through. My life experience has taught me to become more self-aware. Because you see, life still happens. We still get irritated, restless, and discontent. Spiritual growth helps us understand who we are and what it means to be a human being and what it means to have a loving God and to deal with life in a better way. So I have learned on a regular basis, daily basis hopefully, sometimes hourly basis, to do these check-ins. How are you doing? And I will tell you that on Wednesday and Thursday I was a bit irritable, restless, and discontent. And so I encourage you all the time, do check-ins. Do check-ins regularly. Let's do one right now. How are you doing? Turn and ask somebody, how are you doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Good to see you. Doing all right, thank you. So here's the deal. At Lighthouse, we learn to be honest about those kind of questions, right? We learn to be honest about those kind of questions. And so, Dale, are you irritable? Yeah, maybe just a little bit the other night. Today in our series in Matthew, we are getting into the teachings of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount, and we're starting the Beatitudes. These beautiful verses that Jason recited are amongst the best known of Jesus' teaching. Truthfully, we could do a whole series on them, and we could go a verse by a verse each week, and maybe we'll do that another time. But today what I want to do is I want to give you a bit more of an introduction and an overview of the Beatitudes. But I mostly want to help you understand why these verses speak to you in your present journey and your life of spirituality. But to get there, what I want to suggest to you is that one of the most profound things about the Beatitudes that Jason shared with us is that these verses help us understand our own life experience, and it is our life experience that helps us understand these verses. Let me say that one more time. What I want to show you is that when we read the Beatitudes, they may help you understand kind of some of what you're going through and what that means, especially spiritually. But it is also what we're going through that helps us understand these verses from the Gospel of Matthew that Jesus speaks. And the truth of the matter is because Jesus knows us very well. That's what we've been talking about these last weeks. Jesus knows you so very well because he's got his eyes on you. Turn and tell someone he's got his eyes on you. So here's what we've been talking about these last weeks. They're going to be on the screen. He knows what you're going through. He knows how to help you. He knows where you are going. And he knows how to get there. That's pretty good news, isn't it? Okay, so, we're going to kind of build on those things we've been talking about today as we look at these verses from Matthew. In a couple of months, we're going to look at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. So just a word about the Sermon on the Mount. It's 3 chapters, chapters 5, 6, and 7. Starts with the Beatitudes. The end of the bookmark of those 3 chapters is this little story. Even if you haven't been in church much, you might know about this story. Jesus tells the story of a wise man who builds his house on a rock. And when the storm of life came, the rock was a firm foundation and the house stood. Then he said there was this foolish man. And he built his house on the sand, and when the storms of life came, there was no foundation for it to stand, and so the house was swept away. Here's the deal. Most of us have been a little bit foolish in life. Turn and ask someone, have you built your house on the sand? Turn back and say, at times. Yeah, so what Jesus says, and I wanted to put this up front for you beginning today, because what Jesus says is that the wise man is like those who listen to my words and put them into practice. And the foolish man is like the ones who hear my words and they don't put them into practice. So we're not only going to hear Jesus' words, we're going to try to learn to put them into practice. You with me? And so that's what we're talking about today. So grab your Bible and turn again to Matthew chapter 5, page 802. And we're going to do, first of all, a little introduction to the Sermon on the Mount and to the Beatitudes. So here we go, verse 1. One day, as he saw the crowds gathering, Jesus went up on the mountainside and he sat down. His disciples gathered around him and he began to teach them. So just a little bit of background, things that you may not have noticed. The first is, it says that Jesus sat down. You could read over that and it may not mean anything to you, but it would have meant something to the people in Jesus' day. The people in Jesus' day would have connected right away. Rabbis sit down when they teach. The great teachers of our faith, they sit down and then they teach. And so what Matthew is actually saying here is that what Jesus is teaching is equivalent of the great teachers of the Bible, of the faith. And so Jesus is sitting down to teach because he teaches with authority. It also says he began to teach. And other translations maybe do this a little bit better with the Greek. Other translations say Jesus opened his mouth and he began to teach, or he began to speak. And in the Greek, what is actually saying is that he opened his mouth in Greek literally means that he opened his mouth and shared really important things. Really weighty things. And so what it actually says, I was thinking about what would this look like in our modern day English, and here's what I think it would be. We would say Jesus sat down and he opened up his heart to the people and taught them. So it wasn't just stuff up here, it was stuff in here. He opened up his heart and he began to teach them. One more thing, in the gospel, it also indicates that Matthew is saying that this is what Jesus used to teach us. And so there might have been a Sermon on the Mount when Jesus sat down and he went through all of these teachings in order. We don't know for sure. But what the Greek actually seems to say is that this is a summary of his teachings. You want to know what Jesus taught? Here we go. Chapters 5, 6, and 7. This is what Jesus taught. Now, you're going to notice when you go through the Beatitudes, verses 3 and following, that it always starts the same way. It says, God blesses, or blessed, we will often hear in translations. We're going to go with blessed, or God blesses those. And I want to introduce you to a Greek word for blessed, or God blesses. It's makarios. Going to be on the screen. Makarios, yeah, say it out loud. Makarios. Makarios means godlike joy or serenity. Here's the thing. Makarios, or blessedness, is something that is different than happiness. Because makarios, or blessedness, is untouchable. Happiness comes and goes with the circumstances in our life, right? So change can bring happiness. Change can take away happiness. It can come and it can go by chance. If you are happy this morning, it might be because so far nothing bad's happened today. Or you've had a good morning. And so, I ask you, are you happy? And you say, yeah, I'm pretty happy today. Somebody else might be here and I say, are you happy today? And they say, no, not really. And it's because there was a circumstance. Something happened in their life this morning that made them unhappy. Turn and ask someone, are you happy? In the Beatitudes, we're not talking about happiness. Because happiness can come and go. Happiness can turn on a dime. I know people who they are happy one minute and they are just, watch out the next, right? So here's the deal. Happiness is great, but we can't long for happiness all of our life because it's just not realistic. In fact, if being happy is your goal for life, you've got a really small goal. and one that is so dependent upon the circumstances. Here's what blessedness is. Here's what Makarios is. Makarios and therefore the Beatitudes speak of this. It'll be on the screen. The Beatitudes speak of the joy in Christ that comes through your pain. Anybody's attention now? Huh? The Beatitudes, Makarios, this God-like joy is something that comes through your pain, because it is your pain that gives you the opportunity to grow. It's a deep sense of joy and serenity which sorrow and loss and pain and grief are powerless to touch. Here's the deal. You can be mourning, you can be sad, you can be irritable, restless, and get discontent, and you can still be Makarios. That's what I'm saying. So when we come to a relationship with Jesus Christ, God plants inside of us this sense of God-like joy that nothing in life can take away. Makarios is something that nothing in life or death can take away from us. You know, I was thinking about that in regards to the serenity prayer. I think it's what the serenity prayer talks about, especially if you've learned the long version of the serenity prayer. Do you remember? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. But then it goes on and it actually starts talking about Makarios, I think. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. Did you hear that? Accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. Taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that God will what? Make all things right if I surrender to His will. So it's like this sense that it is through the hardships that I am going to find my serenity and peace. And then I will be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with Him forever in the next. I mean, it's all there in just the serenity prayer. So Makarios, the Beatitudes, are this sense of serenity and peace that you hear grateful alcoholics and addicts talk about. That's what we're talking about. That through my difficulties and my struggles, I now have a sense of well-being that has put me in a place where I can be grateful for what I went through. So the thing is, when we go through the Beatitudes, I want to warn you because Jesus literally turns it upside down and makes us realize, if we listen, that the things that we normally think are blessed are the opposite of what Jesus is actually saying. And so, I was thinking about this. Usually in our life we think that the person who is really blessed is the person who has everything they need and want, right? Or has no kind of wrong turns in life, no issues that they struggle with. The person who is really blessed is the person who just has smooth sailing. That's what we want, smooth sailing. That must be blessed. Jesus says those aren't the blessed things at all. And what he says is that it is often through our struggles and our issues, and that's why I'm so glad that you are here today. It's through our struggles and our issues that we come to see God and find that we can truly be blessed in this life. So, with that in mind, I want to walk through each of the Beatitudes. We're going to do it pretty quickly. So grab a Bible, and we're going to talk about each of them, and then we're going to wrap up and close. Chapter 5, verse 3. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for Him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. So let me say that some other translations say, blessed are the poor in spirit. And what he's actually saying is, blessed is the person who realizes his own helplessness and put his whole trust in God. Blessed is the person who understands that they can't do life on their own. Blessed is the person who understands that they need God and that God can do for them what they were unable to do for themselves. This Friday afternoon, I went by Cass County Jail and I visited a young lady who has been to our church on and off for a number of years. We had a very short visit because she was having a court hearing coming up. And so we only got to visit for about 5 minutes. But when she walked in, she broke down and just started to cry. And she said, I can't do it. I know that I cannot do it. There is no hope for me. Here I am again. There is no hope for me. Anybody here ever feel that way? That there is no hope for me. And I stood on the other side of the glass and I thought about the times when I felt that way. And oh man, it became so real to me. And here's the thing, blessed are the poor in spirit. When we are in that place, it is so hard to see it. But we get poor in spirit, and God begins to feel like I've got them right where I want them. Because it's then that so many of you met God. That's when you met God, was when you were poor in spirit, when you were without hope, when you realized, I can't do this, because then it is when God comes and speaks to us that you don't have to, that you can rely on my strength, that it is through me that we're going to do this together. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of God belongs to you. Verse 4. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Literally what it's saying is, I believe, is that blessed are those who mourn on account of sin. Blessed are those, or blessed is the person who is broken by the world's suffering and by one's own sin. For out of that we're going to begin to seek the cross and God's forgiveness in Jesus. So in that jail, through the glass, I said, there is hope. I mean, I know this young lady, she knows Jesus. I know she knows Jesus. There is always hope in Jesus. And so it's in our brokenness and in our sin that we have the opportunity to see the cross. And it is then that we can find comfort and joy. Verse 5, God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. Other translations say, blessed are the meek. It actually speaks, listen, it speaks of the person who has their impulses under control. Turn and tell someone that's not you. Just saying. Blessed is the person who has, let me say it this way, who has their impulses under God's control. Turn and tell someone I'm working on it. What this means is that they are angry at the right time in the right degree, that they're not angry at the wrong time. The Greek word here for humble or meek is the word pros. I didn't put that on the screen, but it's like pause with an R in it. Pros. One is pros who realizes his own limitations, ignorance, and weakness. That's who's truly humble and meek. One who realizes that I have limitations, that I have a lot of ignorance as I go through life, and that I can be weak. When our impulses are out of control, even though we think that is true freedom, we get to a place where we realize that my out of control impulses are not a blessed life in any way. That's why you are here. That's why we are here. Verse 6. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, so they will be satisfied. God hungers and thirsts, or God blesses those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. For in spite of our brokenness, we long for good, to be better. Do you long to be better? Do you long to do good? To do the right thing? Let me ask, have you ever just done something for the right reason and got satisfaction out of it? That's what he's talking about. That's what he's talking about. Blessed is the person who hungers and thirsts for justice, for they will be satisfied. Verse 7, God blesses those who are merciful, for they will show mercy. In Jesus, we seek to reflect him, He is loving, and so we try to love. He is forgiving, so we try to forgive. The thing is that when we start to live more and more like Jesus, when he begins to come through us more and more with the relationships in our life, they begin to reflect us as well. You want the people in your life to become more merciful, be merciful to them. You want the people in your life to become more forgiving or loving, become more forgiving and loving to them. True intimacy starts when we are empathetic and transparent and forgiving other people. Love people like Jesus loves people. That's the mark of spiritual growth. We talk about that all of the time. Verse 8, God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. Let me tell you what this means. I'm just take 1 second on this. Blessed are those, I think it says, blessed are those with no mixed motives. Oh, I don't like that one because it seems like I always have mixed motives. Seems like I always have mixed motives. Like, have you ever done something for someone, maybe something nice for someone, and they were ungrateful? Turn and tell someone next to you, yeah, he's on the other side of me. We do good, we do the right thing, and then we kind of get upset that maybe they're not grateful. Or we do good, we do the right thing, and I wonder what's in it for me, or I wonder if anybody notices today how good I am, or the amazing thing that I did. Here's what Jesus is talking about. Do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do, and then you're going to see God. Do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do, then you will see God. Verse 9, I think he builds on this. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called children of God. Or peacemakers is what some translations say. Peace in the Bible is not the absence of conflict or bad in our lives, it is the presence of good. But listen, the person who is blessed is not the one whose life is filled with good things, but the peacemaker, the one who gives goodness to others. Abraham Lincoln once said, I came across this quote this week, here it is, it'll be on the screen. Die when I may, I would like it to be said of me that I always pulled up a weed and planted a flower where I thought a flower would grow. Isn't that a nice quote? A peacemaker is primarily one who makes right relationships and strives to make relationships right, trying to do good. Finally, Jesus says God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right. And we're going to talk about persecution later in the Gospel of Matthew, so I'm not going to address that one today. Because I wanted to close today by acknowledging that I know that there are people here this morning who are in the midst of some of their struggles in life. Maybe you're encountering the consequences of some of your struggles, and that's why you're here. And one of the things that I have learned in my journey, because it happened to me in the midst of my own addiction, is that when we're in the midst or the throes of our life-controlling issues, they begin to define us. And then we begin to define ourselves by them. And we think, like my friend in the jail cell this week, we begin to think that there's no hope, that we can't do it, that I am just the sum of my mistakes. And if that's you today, I want you to hear me that the promise and the hope in the beatitudes is that in Jesus, God never gives up on us. God never gives up on you. When you are at your worst, God is at his best. When your strength is sapped, his power is made perfect in weakness. If you have been defining yourselves by your mistakes, if you have been giving up on hope that life will ever get better, I want you to know today that as sure as there is a Lighthouse church, there is a God in Christ Jesus who knows our needs and knows what we're going through. To be blessed is to know that you are not the sum of your mistakes, but you are who God says that you are, that you have been created in God's image, a masterpiece, a person who is worth dying for according to Jesus Christ. And because of that, there is hope for today and hope for tomorrow. I am a child of God. Say it with me. I am a child of God. And because I am a child of God, I am free. Say, I am free. You are a child of God, and in faith we trust God that He is continuing to work, even when He feels absence, to shape us and mold us into the people that He wants us to be. Amen?